Hello, welcome to Nurturing the New Paradigm. I'm Adrienne Ero-Phillips, and today I am super excited for being here, Stephanie.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm super excited to just deepen in this conversation with you. So, Stephanie is a soul guide, a sacred artist who's passionate about inspiring magical humans to embrace their journey and bring more of who they are to their life. She serves a global community of healers, artists, heart-centered visionaries through her sacred arts practice, Heart Blossom, where she creates transformational offerings for individuals and groups. And she's a musician. She just put out an EP, so we can figure out where to find her music after this. We'll link to the bio. She's a multi-dimensional being with work sourced from her soul and her gifts, and she has earth guides of earth and sky, and her she sources energy from her own journey as a queer witch. Yes, I'm a queer witch as well. Neurodivergent person and complex trauma survivor. She's a certified Akashic records practitioner and has trained in astrology, body-centered psychotherapy, integrative energy healing, liberatory facilitation, and the 4 skills of radical relating. She brings a grounded, life-affirming, and liberatory consciousness to her work, and she loves supporting clients to break free from outdated cultural and ancestral imprinting and come to a greater expression of their innate wisdom, creativity, and power. So thank you. That's so awesome. You got so many wonderful, wonderful tools in your toolbox.
Yes, I have Gemini on the midheaven, so I have all the bits and pieces and somehow they come together.
That's awesome. I'm a Gemini sun, so
Oh,
I
wonderful.
totally understand. Nice. So at the beginning of our time together, Stephanie and I created a poem together, and I'm super excited for us to share what came through us. So yeah, let's share it.
All right.
Nice. So connecting into the earth's wisdom, grounded and descended, trusting the process.
Remember who you are and why you are here.
Here to be a star seed, grounded to earth, angels, ascended masters, guides here with us. Gratitude.
Can you feel your roots? How deep do they go?
What layers are needing to be tended?
The tending is holy.
The wounds in our blood to be tended and alchemized, released like moon blood back to her.
Are you willing to let go and be received?
To let go of the matrices now loosened by you trusting the whisper of intuition.
It begins in your bones and the weight of your body on the lawn.
The body holds it all, to feel it all, to dance and shake the energy free, present in the divinity that is you.
Move to the rhythm of the earth and the wisdom of the seasons.
Listen to Mama Gaia. She knows and holds it all. The stars are your allies here.
You are the stars, and the stars are in you.
You create the universe with a single breath, a single thought, a single word. One action leads to legacy and lifetimes healed.
Trust in the legacy of light.
This legacy of your light was birthed in the darkness of the womb. You are both. You are free.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that practice with me.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like nurturing the new paradigm is all about creativity and fun and just taking away the layers of density, especially when you're
Mhm.
dealing with conversations around white supremacy and like how can we dismantle and transform and alchemize? And so it's important to bring
Mhm.
that lightness to it. So yeah, so thank you so much for being here. Can you tell us a little bit more about your story and how you came to be doing the work you're doing?
Yes. So in some ways, I don't even know how it just sort of unfolded, through following, one step after another on my path. But it really goes back to my childhood growing up and just being kind of this weird person who never felt like I fit in with my peers. And I grew up in a family that has a lot of trauma, and I experienced a lot of trauma, and that really also like added to that feeling of, I guess, like alienation, you could say. And also just, um, feeling like I wasn't really welcome as myself in life. And so I just really tried to be different. I tried to be like the way that I was supposed to be and be like other people. And which for me meant like trying to be less sensitive, less creative, like more, focused on following the rules and pleasing other people, and even just like, you know, being attractive and appealing and looking good and just all the things. There's like a lot of what we might call like narcissistic sort of programming in my family, and I think that's really like our culture. So I absorbed all of that, and it just had me really like disconnected from who I actually was, and just struggling with a lot, just anxiety and depression, and just like relationships that weren't good. And um, so I just was always really shy. And eventually, as I sort of followed that path, forward, it got to the point where like I realized like I'm in this whole life, and like now I'm an adult, and I don't like, what am I even doing here? Like this isn't my life. Like
Yeah.
I'm in like someone else's life. How the heck did I
Mhm.
get here? And then starting to realize like, oh, I got here through my choices, and like I need help um to like get on a different path that's more authentic for me. And so along with that, I was starting to awaken to my intuition, to my sensitivity, to being a witch. And,
Mhm.
it all happens like in a mysterious way, right? Like you don't just get like, somebody sending you a pamphlet saying, this is all the details and exactly what's going on with you and what you need to do. It's like, no, you have to be in the journey and in the mystery. So,
Mhm.
you know, I'm still on the journey, we all are. But, eventually I started realizing like what I was really interested in is um, talking about intuition, talking about the paranormal and creativity, and just like living in a more authentic way, which also for me has to do with living in connection with the multidimensional nature of life, and just beyond, you know, our intellect
Mhm.
and like the material things that we can experience with our five senses, to realize like there's so much more.
Mhm.
And the more that we regard that, then we can like collaborate with life, and that's when we actually like get into a life affirming way of being, which is like better for everyone.
Yes.
So yeah, so I made some choices along the way to like step away from the career I was in, and leave relationships that weren't aligned. And but now I'm in a place where I get to do work that I love, and I get to work with my friends and awesome people. And like, I don't know, just I think to sum it up, I just started realizing like how much change was possible when you go after it. And it does take courage, and it takes support.
Mhm.
um
Mhm.
so yeah, so now I just get to, basically be out there and be witchy and talk to people about like cool stuff. I mean, it's really awesome.
That's amazing. That's awesome. I think a lot of people can resonate with that journey of like just, utilize that little teeny whisper and figure out the next step and see where it takes you. I think I just read on a PDF from one of the other speakers, Mary Thompson Reynolds. She has a PDF around writing practices, and she has a quote around something along the lines of like, you can't see further than the 40 feet in front of you if you're like have your head like, I don't know the exact quote, but if you're in the dark and you have your lights on in the fog, you can't see more than 40 meters ahead of you, but you can make the whole journey that way. And I thought that was like pretty cool to like think about. Yeah, and it sounds like that has led you to a really amazing a magical path because yeah, I mean, I love receiving your newsletter around like what is happening in the stars and what the astrology is doing. And so I mean, right away, would you mind like talking a little bit more about the era that we've now find ourselves in, which I think is, I just feel a lighter energy and I feel like so much more support in my throat chakra because it felt
Mm.
so constricting for so long,
Mhm.
and that, the persecution wound of being a witch is still very present and, have to continuously, you know, surround the I feel like surrounding the fear with compassion and love, and
Mhm.
it's always going to be there. It's like it's in our brain stem, like we're always going to be humans with a fear, like to survive, but it's like how can we put ourselves out there more and more and create more of this momentum towards nurturing the new paradigm where exactly what you're saying, all of these multidimensional layers are not to be feared but to be like embraced and utilized and worked with, and like you know we're not really that scary as witches, like we're not, but
Mm.
there's so much to unpack and our culture has a lot of ways to go. And so for us
Mhm.
stepping up and having these conversations, it really does feel like the next step in the evolution. So long
Mhm.
long thing to say of like what is your take on the current state of the astrology and where the earth is right now and how we can step up in yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, I have so many thoughts to what you just said. So,
Let me jump
um,
on it.
but to start with the astrology, yeah. So, anyone who follows astrology, you probably heard that there have been a number of significant events over the last few years. I mean, the astrological intensity has definitely ratcheted up, which just matches what we can already sense and experience like in our normal waking reality. So, it's just another lens to view it all. And I really love astrology in part because it helps you like get the systemic view, as well as it can help you get context for your own individual. So it kind of like can scale up or down.
Yeah.
Um, but the most recent big shift has been the shift of Saturn and Jupiter into Aquarius. So they've moved from being in Capricorn, which is an earth sign that's very associated with tradition and the way that we've done things, and, like our ancestors, as well as like our established systems. Collectively, so the government, the institutions, and all of the culture that underlies that. So it's really kind of like rooted in the past in a lot of ways. And in particular, we've been dealing with the shadow elements of that with Pluto and Saturn conjuncting last year, and just a whole host of things. So we've been, as you mentioned, in that really heavy, um, shadow revelation time of like, whoa, this is really bad. Like,
Mm,
we have to look at this now. Like, we can't look away. Saturn is here to like have us take responsibility. But ultimately, that's for creating something that's sustainable long term. And so now, what we're in just the beginning of the shift. That conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter in Aquarius happened at the winter solstice in December 2020, but it's a long-term influence where really we're moving from, okay, we've seen what's not working and we know like this can't continue. So now we're in the place of like, all right, how do we want to restructure? Like, how do we want to do things instead? Like, what are we creating and really co-creating?
yes.
Um, it's like moving outside of the box, and it really is moving into like a collective and more community approach versus like a top-down hierarchical. So noticing that with Aquarius, like each of us individually contributes to the collective, and we each have roles to play. And everybody's role is a little bit different based on the gifts that they have. So there's that connection with Leo, which is the opposite archetype to Aquarius. So you're drawing on your individual Leo, sort of your individual spark of the divine, and you're bringing it into the collective space to like add your offering.
Mhm.
Um, And now with that, there's also, as I mentioned, like an out of the box thinking. So it's like we have to try something different. We have like new social technologies. And so, especially now as we are just getting into this energy, like we also have to deal with what comes up in that, like the fear of being different, the fear of going against, what we've known, the fear of being rejected or ostracized for speaking a truth that is not welcome, things like that. So it's also where we get to grapple with those wounds that we might hold, and ultimately, we have the opportunity to move through that into more strength and more collaboration, and just there's a lot more room for possibility now. And like part of that is because unfortunately, like things had to get really bad,
Yeah.
like for more people, for people who are higher in the hierarchy of the Capricorn realm, like that's just a thing about humans, especially like the culture that we're in now, that like a lot of times, like because our empathy has been so attacked by living in dehumanizing systems, like people don't have that ability to put themselves in another's position and realize like what's going on until they directly experience it.
Mm.
So yeah, so I just there's a lot of possibility, and this is like a long-term thing. So it's really like what are we building for, that legacy,
Yeah.
that will go beyond our individual lifetimes.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yes.
yeah. And
Uh,
also like with that, there's the chaos of the process.
mm,
So that's another feature that we get to be with.
yes. Well, I'm feeling my body just have vibrations all the way through as you're speaking. Such authenticity and truth. Like I can feel it resonate in my body. So thank you for all of that. Wow. Yes. What tips and tools or technique in particular do you feel like you could give a listener to really tap into their self-worth and their intuition
Hmm.
at this time?
Well, so there's a couple, like I have two paradigm shifts that I share to move toward life affirming culture, which to
Mm,
me is an antidote to, to racism and white supremacy culture, and all the interwoven, oppressive systems and cultures that we're living with, that ultimately like have an undertone of death and violence and constriction.
mm,
um, and there's a lot more about that. There's some amazing books on that. Columbus and Other Cannibals by Jack D. Forbes is an amazing book talking about colonialism and, sort of like the energetics of that, and how ultimately like it's a result of everyone being dehumanized, including the people who are doing the harm.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and so I'm all about like bringing us back into life affirming, where we're collaborating with all of life. And so the two paradigm shifts that I have with that are moving from perfection to progress, like
Mm,
as our goal.
yeah.
So perfection isn't real. It doesn't exist on Earth. It just doesn't. And so it's like a waste of our precious life force energy to strive for it. Like it's not going to happen.
Mm,
So instead of like wasting all that time and staying like stuck in the rigid perfection and how it has to be, like we can embrace the constant change
mhm,
that is actually like the essence of life here on earth, and that we could shift our efforts toward progress and growth is our goal. And so with all of this, it's all about, to me, bringing this into our daily lives. So
mm,
like as you mentioned, having that compassionate acceptance of like, wow, there's a part of me that like is always trying to be perfect
mm,
and thinks that I have to be, like almost like I have to be more than human in order to be okay. But
mm,
to realize like that's actually a toxic perspective that is not possible, and it's like just perpetuating like misery for everyone.
mhm,
And so when we open to shifting from perfection to progress, so like in a daily, life, that could be, I have a whole to-do list of the things that I want to get done today, And, you know, I imagine that if I get all these things done, then that's going to mean like I'm a productive person, I'm organized, whatever I believe about myself. But it may be that I get a migraine on
Yeah.
this day
Mm.
and I actually have to go lay down for 2 hours. And that means that I don't have 2 hours to check off my things on my list. When I shift into this new mindset, I can realize like, okay, I still made progress.
Yeah.
And perhaps like it actually serves my ultimate vision to have rest.
Yeah.
So that's just one example. I mean, there's like you can apply in any way, really. Um, and then the second paradigm shift that I would also, it's all about applying it in the day to day, is shifting from performance to practice as
Mm.
like our orientation to moving through whatever we're doing.
Mm.
So again, we're not here to perform our lives like for any human or divine audience.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're here to like literally be alive as these divine humans. Like there's a paradox right there.
Yeah.
Somehow we're both human and divine and like we're meant to welcome all of it.
Yeah.
Um and I really believe and know strongly that we're here to live and learn through that, what I consider a sacred practice of being human, and then practicing every day. So again, it's like, how can I show up today? Like, what do I want to try out today that aligns with my values or the world that I want to co-create, the world that I want to experience, and just like really bringing it down, rooting it down into that day to day.
Yeah.
So really, like to me, it's about starting with those shifts and allowing that to inform like whatever it is that we're up to.
Yes. Woo. Thank you. I love that. Yes. So from performance to practice, and from
Mhm.
the first one again was
Perfection to progress.
progress.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. That makes me think of like the practice of just all of us being in our own homes, and what's the most important thing but our own stories we tell ourselves. And that's definitely a
Mhm.
practice, and that starts from within. It's like it's not about out there. It's about what we are telling ourselves. And is that life affirming?
Mhm.
Instead of the old paradigm of like lack and not enoughness, or scarcity, not enoughness, or is that of like the new paradigm, what you're saying is like a practice of self-love, and a practice of compassion, a practice of forgiveness, a practice of like, hey, I made 3 meals today and rested. That's enough. Like,
Mhm.
and I think that, yeah, think like I, yeah, Mother Earth has given us this time for a reason to deepen into those paradigm shifts. So thank you so much for giving us those those constructs.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I want to kind of deepen into also a little bit more about, you said, kind of dismantling your wording is like from destructive conscious, like destructive underlying kind of violence, non-life affirming to life affirming. And
Mhm.
my framework that kind of gets to the same thing is, from the patriarchy to the creatriarchy, and from
Mm.
the equitable, from white supremacy to equitable sovereignty, and from cisnormativity to love elementality, and from um, heteronormativity to radical respect. So basically, just like these pieces of like life affirming new paradigm solutionary ways to think about things. And so I just wanted to hear your perspectives about deepening into particularly the wounds of whiteness and white supremacy, as this um, event is really meant to go deep into to those conversations, and alchemize and tend, and you know you know deepen into to what we are here on earth to heal, right? Because I love how you were saying
Mhm.
about not ascending out of anything, but really being grounded with what we've been given in this body in this lifetime. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, such big topics, right? It's hard to summarize, but yeah, I mean, I think, okay, so yeah, the ascension piece. So with all of these like supremacy culture and of course like supremacy culture as a systemic institution
Mhm.
is like constantly creating and perpetuating trauma, right? Like, so it's primarily, you know, doing harm to people who are the target, who are marginalized in that culture. But it's also, as I mentioned, it requires dehumanization like all around.
Right.
And I believe that this has something to do with like trauma. Like the trauma is really at the root of it.
Mhm.
And what I know from my own personal journey is that trauma tends to make us ungrounded in our bodies. It tends to, as a way to temporarily survive and be safe in a survival situation,
Mhm.
we often like dissociate or kind of like go up into our heads, or we may learn that like we have to strategize, you know, using our minds, and we have to figure it out, or perhaps like we can't trust anyone, or any number of like, you know, different forms that that will take. But
Mhm.
um, ultimately, we are in a culture that is highly traumatized,
Yes.
um,
Oh,
for so many reasons. And so, first of all, it's to realize that it's so much more than any one like thing or one person or one place. Like we're all in it, we're all in the system in different ways, and we all, as you said, like have that sovereignty of how what we choose to do with
mhm.
our positionality.
Mhm.
So first of all, it's like realizing that it's not just about you, it's about like the collective, because like we all impact like the world around us. And that's where we have power. So when you heal yourself, you become more available to show up toward what we're co-creating. You become more available to use your gifts and use your power to serve what matters to you.
Mhm.
Um, and so with this whole ascension thing, you know, like a lot of people say like, oh, we're ascending and we're reaching enlightenment and that's what we're going for. And like, that's really popular in new age talk. But really like what I understand is that we rise by rooting. So we're actually like bringing, you know, we could say like a more expansive soul consciousness, and we're meant to actually bring that into our bodies and root it down. So like literally through being present in our bodies, which means feeling things,
Yes.
including feeling pain and feeling discomfort and feeling despair, or like whatever it is that we feel when we actually regard like what's happening in the world, when we regard like what we've participated in,
Mhm.
like what our families have participated in, like what's the legacy, just like looking at the whole picture, like especially, you know, like as a white person, like I have patterns of like I retreat into my head and I intellectualize, and that's how I help myself feel safe. But
Mhm.
it's like I have to realize that like first of all, like I actually am like safe in a scenario that like my sense of safety um is is a felt sense more than a tangible reality sometimes. And so it's my role to be willing to be uncomfortable and allow myself to shift and open to a new way of doing things um, that ultimately is needs to be happening from like deeper in our bodies.
Yeah.
Um, and so as we individually take part in this, um, we energetically can become more grounded and more alive in our bodies. And then as more people do that, we shift the collective culture and just like literally the energy, you know, from this all the supremacy culture energy, which is ungrounded, dissociated, overly intellectualized,
Mhm.
and real and like and disconnected from reality. Like there is a level of psychosis
Mm.
of
Yeah.
like, oh, and gaslighting, right? Like, oh, it's like this, but like this is just something that we made up because it serves an agenda.
Mhm.
And so we each have the opportunity to shift the legacy of trauma, the legacy of violence, and withdraw our participation
Yes.
from that,
Mm.
so that we're not being part of perpetuating that further. like
Yes.
a culture and a system that perpetuates violence.
Hmm.
And it's viral, like that's how it moves. So like it's just like in some ways with COVID, right? Like I have to take action to protect other people from me if I may potentially have COVID, and I might not even be able to know if I have it, but I
Mm.
still have to take action to protect other people.
Wow.
So that's what I'm talking about. And so whether it's white supremacy, whether it's patriarchy, whether it's heteronormativity, like any of the isms, capitalism is a big one that
Yep.
interlaces with all of them. Um, like it starts with how we can be with ourselves, and then that gives us resources to also like be more open and affirming with others. So it
Mm.
goes hand in hand. It's not an either or. Like the binary thing is another feature of supremacy culture,
Mm.
as is rigidity,
Mm.
like, and rigidity in our bodies, right? Like that's a feature of whiteness. I know I feel that
Yes. Uh-huh.
in my body. And so, for me, that's also something that I talk about with my family. Like I've been having conversations with my mother about our particular family and how this shows up in our family, in the way that we've done things, in the family stories, and the things that we avoid, the things that we go for, the things that we prioritize. And it's like, it's not easy stuff, fun stuff to talk about. But it's really important.
Yeah.
And I guess the last thing I want to say with that is like what I know from my own healing journey personally with like grappling with my family of origin trauma. It can feel like it's impossible to heal, like this is the core of who I am. Like I'm just broken and damaged forever. But like I continually find that healing can be miraculous. Like, and
Mm.
often just when you get to that point where you believe that it can't possibly change, you just take a few more breaths and then suddenly you're like on the other side of it. Like
Mm.
it's magic. I
Yeah.
don't know. Um, and so with all of that, I just am all about cultivating and opening ourselves to divine love as a support in this process. And to me,
Yes.
divine love is an energy of what we might know as unconditional positive regard, which is like pure acceptance
Mm.
of what is. And when we actually create space for acceptance of like, this is what's here, we don't
Mhm.
have to like it, but we have to accept that this is here right now. And when we can have that acceptance, it creates space for
Mhm.
like, what's next? What do we do with this?
Yes. Ooh. My kitty likes it too. Midnight.
Hello.
Yeah. It's midnight with my black cat with the crooked tail, like the tree
Mm.
I am. Wow. My heart space is just, that's been a really huge piece of it for me, is like the name of of your organization, of your work is Heart Blossom, and I literally have been feeling that in my heart, and like how it feels tangible now to feel this heart energy that is not anything that has to do with here. It's like so much here, and also so
Mhm.
much in the womb space. Like those are the two places that the nurturing the new paradigm really happens. And so yeah, thank you for all of those things. That I know there's so many white people who are going to be listening to this that are going to be very grateful for hearing you just lay out all of those different pieces, of those interconnected pieces. We were just talking that we're both Gemini, so like you see all the interconnected pieces all the time, and it's important to like really put it together and like just simplify it into like, yeah, divine love from the heart space, divine grounded and rootedness from the womb space. For me, it's like this year I got chickens, and it's like the daily practice of going down and like feeding my chickens, making sure they have water, making sure they have food, you know, checking if they, laid eggs, and if they did, sending gratitude and love for a mutual creation here on Mother Earth. And it's like it's that simple and that profound at the same time to really shift, and release these ideologies of white supremacy, or supremacies, interrelated supremacies, as you're saying, into this this nurturance of what we know is possible, and what we are literally living into with this conversations. Thank you so much. This is
Yeah.
really amazing.
Yeah, and I just want to add, just to be clear, that like I'm not saying like all you have to do is love yourself and that takes care of everything, right? Like that's like the foundation to being able to take action that like has a tangible impact for others, right? So like I'm not going to tell you what actions are yours to take. That's like your role to figure that out. But
Mhm.
like I'm just saying that um like we need that foundation in order for it to be sustainable and have the resilience, especially as white people, you know, we tend to not have a lot of emotional resilience, which is a
Yeah.
characteristic of trauma.
Mm,
um, so we have to work for that, and then that allows us, that enables us to also take other actions, um,
yes.
so that it's not again, it's not a one or the other, right? It's like a both and.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that piece is
Mm-hmm.
very important, that you need to, yeah, thank you. That was brilliantly said. That it's not just all, it's not just all love and light. We got to go deep into the shadows. We got to dig deep into the you know, to find, to figure out how to tend, to really tend. Another amazing colleague, Charlotte Wynn says, like, tend, like continue to tend. And that energy of tending to me feels like both and of the heart space, and also like you can't not take action. You gotta keep stepping up in whatever ways, you know, you're being called to by intuition. So thank you so much
Mm-hmm.
for that. um yeah, is there anything else you would like to say before I ask my final question? Because you have such
Oh, there's
amazing just wisdom to share with us. So thank you for all of this. It's been amazing.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I don't know. I mean, like spirit, you know, like they're just talking. Like if we could sit here for 3 hours and they would keep giving me stuff to say. So, well, I do want to say first of all that I opened my Akashic record before this, so I've been channeling from there, sort of in the background as I've been speaking.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
and I think that the main thing that I just want to add is for everyone listening and watching, like ultimately your job as a human is to be yourself,
Mhm.
because that's when we have a whole planet of people being who they are and allowing their gifts to come forward. That's when we have that thriving collective that's like the highest expression of Aquarius.
Mhm.
So it can feel really scary, especially for magical people. And I know we didn't get into too much of the witch wound and all that stuff, but you know, we have to move through. We have to have courage to be ourselves, but ultimately I believe that's why we're here. We're not here to be somebody else.
Yep.
And usually, you know, when we're trying to get away from who we are, we're trying to escape or get away from our humanity, like, and the mess of it, that's where we actually really need to stay and get more present. Um,
Mhm.
that's when there's possibility for change to happen.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. Wow. So my final question is, what is the feeling of the new paradigm you wish to imagine into, or you do nurture
Hmm.
for yourself? What is the feeling state?
Hmm. I think for me, aliveness
Mm,
is the word. So just feeling energy throughout my body, and feeling that vibrance, and the sense of connectedness to all of life. You know, whether it's the trees or the birds or um, you know, an object, a rock that I have, or another person, or you know, the elements. Just like really like feeling alive in that web of existence, to me is really visceral, and that's what I try to root into every day.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a great place to be, and that includes the gamut of emotion, right? It's like
Hmm.
feel all the feelings and to not push anything away, but allow all of it. And thank you so much. Where can we
Yeah.
find you if we want to connect, stay connected with you and go deeper into your work? And Yeah.
Yeah. So the best place to find out like everything that I'm up to is at my website, which is heartblossom.life. I'm on social media, but very intermittently. So you may or may not see recent updates there. And in particular, like one thing I just want to highlight is that I'm going to be offering a spring equinox circle that's open to anyone who wants to sign up. So you can see more about that on my website. And I also have the Starlight Society, which is my member community for magical humans. So that's like the main place that I'm really loving hanging out these days and just like getting to be with my people and share astrology and sacred sound. And we have circles there. And like, I really just want to engage with my people, like wherever. Um, so yeah, or you could send me an email, Stephanie@heartblossom.life. Love hearing from people. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. I can feel it in my body how sensitive you are to all of these different pieces, and it's been a pleasure to connect with you, and I know that so many people are just enjoying and getting so much grounded wisdom from this. So thank you so much.
Mm. Yeah, thank you for having me. It was my pleasure.
Yeah. Until next time, thank you so much for joining us. Much love.